Hi guys, welcome to your tutorial on how the reformer is supposed to be set up and also how we're going to convert the reformer into a tower unit and also how to convert it into jump board style. So when you guys are actually looking at your reformer, we're going to start over here. We have the foot bar, okay? So a lot of the foot bars can be different widths. This is a standard foot bar. This is a balance body piece of equipment. It's a studio reformer with just a standard foot bar here, okay? When you're looking at this, I'm just going to shift this box over. We are having to look at different placements of the foot bar, okay? So this is our medium version, our middle height. This is our flat height, okay? And then we go back to our default, which is at its highest point. So if you're working with like an Allegro with balance body, you may have the opportunity to shift your bar forward more, and it literally can go all the way on the other side. And if you know what I'm talking about, you've seen those white Allegro reformers through balance body. I think they might be the only one. I don't believe any other manufacturers out there do the same thing. But you also have the infinity bar, okay? So that can be a wider foot bar, you know, just for different reasons that we want to work with that, right? So from that position, we also have a ledge. So this is your foot ledge. I know that Peak does not have this ledge, or at least in their older days, they did not have a ledge. So it makes it really nice. If you don't have a ledge, you would just have to get a foot plate that is inserted here, right against here, into the grooves, and then behind, we would basically tighten it up so that it would be in a very stable place. Okay, so from moving forward, we have all of the springs here. Now, I have it set where we have medium springs, heavy springs, light springs, and extra light springs, okay? This is balance body. From a safety perspective, all springs on if you're not utilizing the equipment. Two reasons. One is safety. Clearly, if someone were to come in and sit down on the reformer and there was the lightest spring on, that carriage would go zooming over there, and that could just be a liability for you and that client as well. So that is number one, always keeping those springs on for safety. This is not a safe piece of equipment if you don't know what you're doing with it. Number two, wear and tear. We don't want to strain one spring. If you had like the same medium spring on the entire time, you're wear and tearing that consistently, and then you're going to have to purchase more springs. So it's really nice to have them all on so that they're not pulling on one another. Does that make sense? So from that position, you also will have your gear bar. So the gear bar, and I don't really have a good demonstration of this with the studio reformer, but you guys may on your equipment at home. But the gear bar is right here, and this can be shifted forward for someone who is really small in height, so a shorter person or like a child. For a taller person, we want to bring this out, okay, so that we can create more range of motion, create more resistance for the client. In here, we just typically would keep it at a default setting where we just have it in its basically its second position where you can have more range of motion here. From this position, you have also your safety straps. So we have a fuzzy on here just to make it more comfortable for the clients, for yourself. But yeah, the fuzzy is on here for that safety strap when we're talking about our short box series or anything that's going to utilize that strap. When we are looking at the rest of the reformer here, this is our carriage, right? And when we're talking about cleaning equipment, because that's so important, is just to have the care for your reformer, especially if you own your own reformer. You know, like, you spend thousands of dollars on this and you want it to last for a really long time. So it's really important to add in the cleaning aspect of this, where you want to, and what we use here in the studio is water and tea tree oil. Spray the sides, each side of the carriage here, of the reformer, getting really into it so that it doesn't stick. Because if you've ever been to a studio before and you look down at the floor, like there's hair, it's just, it's not clean. You're also looking at the sides here of the reformer too. So it's really important to maintain the care for it because it's going to grind the wheels. So you don't want that to happen. You want the wheels to be nice and smooth here. So I'm going to attach these all back on. Just so that, again, we go back into like a default position. And we move along here to the shoulder blocks. So there's two different ways, especially on balanced body. I'm not familiar with a lot of other models, how that works, but there are two different ways that these shoulder pads can be set. One is a narrow version and one is a wider version. So if you glance at your shoulder blocks, do you have the opportunity to make that narrow or wide? How do you find that out? Because if we were to take the shoulder blocks off of here, and here these are pins because I have the tower conversion. But right now it's set in a wide position. And since you can't see that closely, if I was to make this narrow, I'm basically going to take the shoulder blocks off of here, taking this one, and we're going to set it on this one. So I would switch it, and all of a sudden this is going to be a narrow position. Why would we do that? Well, a petite senior client, a child, again, who doesn't have broad shoulders. Obviously, if you're working with athletes or men or something, you default it to a wider position. But honestly, it's just more comfortable. So we typically will keep that in the wider position here regardless. So I'm going to actually keep this off for right now. Headrest, we have 3 positions. Your highest position, second highest, so there's a little groove back here, a little lever, and then you go all the way down flat for certain exercises that we need our headrest down flat. Again, you're going back to postures. Does the headrest need to be in the highest position? Does that actually make it look better for the client's cervical spine? Or do they actually need this to be super flat and add towels underneath it? So it's really important to look at what it is, how your client, your individual, even if you're teaching group classes, each individual, okay, yep, Sally, she's gonna need her headrest all the way up flat. I know Nancy's gonna need hers all the way up. So again, just kind of taking that into consideration here. Again, cleaning out through these rails all the way in the back here. And I typically like to have the handles when we're doing any type of arm exercises. It is not a requirement. And then we always have our loops handy. Some of you guys will find that the loops, there's double loops. So there's like smaller loops for hands and then the larger ones for the feet. So that is all part of this as well. Okay, so before I move forward into converting this into a tower mode, I just want to, again, reiterate jump board. So when we're working with jump board, we're gonna move our foot bar out to the second position here, the middle position, because now we have the support from the foot bar to support the board when we're jumping, okay? So you have your jump board here, you're gonna place it right there, and you're gonna lock it into place here on both sides of the knobs, and then you're good to go. Okay, just to remove it, you're gonna undo these, take it back up, and you're all set. Okay, so that is reformer mode. When we go to convert this into tower mode, we're gonna definitely take those shoulder blocks off. So when that happens, we go ahead and we place them back here. We're going to keep the loops and the handles down here on the floor, all right? So it's nice in a clean place, so it's not all over the place. We're gonna keep that headrest down flat, and we're gonna take our risers all the way down. So these pins are coming out, going all the way down. Again, this is if you have a tower mat conversion. Otherwise, you'll have the wooden risers. Or if you're working with Stott, you might still have like metal risers as well. Then we come over here, we're gonna take all of the springs off. We're gonna shift this all the way back. We're going to take our foot bar down flat so it's out of the way, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and look for the mat, and you can see the legs here. So the legs, this is a wider position than you would see on the other side, where the legs are just right up against the corners of the mat here. So we're going to take that longer position because it has to go over the ledge here, and we're going to lock it in. And it literally should lie flat. If it's up loose, there's obviously something that's wrong or disconnected there. And then we're going to look for the flaps here. So this is literally to maintain the upholstery. Okay, so we don't want any damage to the upholstery, so we want to make sure that these flaps are going to be on that end for when we go into our tower exercises. So I'm going to place that over here, like so. I'm going to come over here to check that my flaps are out. And the bed is all flat here. Everything's looking good. Box is set up right up against the unit. So if there was any gaps here, you would see some lifting off the mat. But right now it looks pretty good. So everything looks like it's in its right position. Then we go over to the tower unit. We have a lot of different springs here. So first of all, obviously this is going to be a little different if you're on a Cadillac because things are going to be divided on one end to the other. So there's just everything that's positioned here on the tower side. So we have our roll-up bar, right? So this is our roll-up bar, and it's placed with the short arm springs. So the yellow arm springs here are the shorter arm springs. It doesn't, if you're working on a different model, you might have a different color, but the shorter ones are the short arm springs here, okay? So this will actually give the client more resistance or more help, if you should say that. Then we have our 2 long arm springs, okay? So this will give the client less resistance, which could, if we had this on the roll-up bar, this would actually make the exercise harder, right? Because they don't have all that resistance to bring them back up for the roll-up. But this is also great to use for your standing arm exercises, or you could also use this for your hip work exercises. So all your leg circles and frogs and things like that. So these are the long arm springs or the lighter leg springs. Then we go into our heavy. So these are purple. So these are our heavy leg springs or our heavy long arm springs, okay? So either which way, you can use them for both. That's what makes this so nice because like the sky's the limit depending on the client that you're working with, right? And then we're gonna keep this at a default setting right here in the center. So this will, anything that's gonna make this go up higher, if we move this up higher, say we're talking about your hip work, your leg circles, it's going to make the exercise harder, okay? So not only do we have heavy springs on, but now we just raise this up, the exercise is gonna be way harder. If we were to take this down lower, it's still gonna be a heavier spring, but the exercise is going to be easier. So hopefully that makes sense. The more that this spring, this eyelet is away from the client, the more resistance they're getting, right? So if you think back into Magician Series, if you guys are going that far into the full comprehensive program, Magician Series is your spring is all the way at that top eyelet here, okay? So in order to float, to feel like you're off the mat here. And then you have your blue springs that we can use as a half spring here for other types of exercises like our footwork when we're adding on for footwork to make this, or for monkey, whatever the case may be. And then that is also going to be located behind the tower unit, which is where we keep our red spring over here. We have another red spring that is all the way at the bottom, and that's the default. So we'll keep that red spring here for our footwork series, for monkey, for tower, things like that. And then you can also keep an additional blue spring to make this exercise harder. So that is basically the entire gist of the tower unit. The final part about this is our push-through bar, right? So our push-through bar here is already set up with the safety strap. So if we let that go down all the way, we have our push-through bar that can be literally set up for the push-through exercises this way, right? So that's top-loaded. This is a top-loaded exercise. Then we want to go bottom-loaded. So anything that is bottom-loaded is going to be required to have the safety strap. And from that position, we're going to take this out, okay? And this is the first thing that gets done. The safety strap gets put on first. And on this one, we have about 3 loops. So how do you know which loop to use, right? So if you had a really, really tall client, their legs are going to be longer, right? They need more room here. So if we're thinking about footwork as an example, we're going to probably want to take this up a little bit higher in order to give the client that room here. If we had someone who came in and they're like a 10-year-old kid, we may want to bring this down a little further to them because they may not have the longest legs. But usually, if you're working with these, the second one is like default here, okay? Even if you have multiple ones, just kind of look for the middle loop, and that's typically your default, and then you'll work your way from there. That is the first step. Always a safety strap. Then we go into the springs. So when we go into the springs here, I'm gonna make sure that this upholstery is hitting the spring. You always come from the side, okay? So we don't wanna get all awkward and come from the center here. We always wanna walk to the side, and then we take it like that, okay? Then we're gonna do the other side. Like so. And now your client will get underneath it, and they're starting with their footwork series, depending on which side they're on. You give them, especially if you're working with a private client, the help of lifting, okay? So you're using 2 hands, and you're lifting up using your legs in order to do that. So you never want to have your hand anywhere where this thing, if their foot slips, it's going to hit you. So again, understanding the safety of that. That is your bottom loaded. How do we get you out of this? We're going to take each spring out one at a time, like so. And if you were teaching a group class, you were explaining this to the client. You're explaining to all the clients in the class what to be doing so that the class moves smoothly and the client is being educated, okay? So from that, springs are down, they're locked. We're going to take our strap out, just like so. Loop that in, and say we want this out of the way. We're going to go ahead and take this back up. And I like to make this nice and clean, so I'll just keep it like that, wrap it around. The Velcro is there, and now it's in a clean, safe position. You can tighten it up if you want it to be a little bit tighter, but that really is the whole gist of it. And you have your complete tower unit. So hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have questions, let us know. But this would be the default way of basically putting together a reformer into mat. And then real quickly, I'm just going to go ahead and convert this back to reformer so you guys can see how that has worked too. So now you're teaching your clients. They're going to go back into reformer mode. All right, guys, we're going to take the mats off one at a time. Okay, and you're going to put those in the designated spots that you want your client to be at. Again, you don't want to have leg to mat. It's going to basically create indentation in the upholstery, and you don't want that to happen. So you always want leg to leg, mat to mat if you're stacking these up from a group perspective. All right, then we're going to take our foot bar all the way up, nice and high. We're taking that carriage back in. I'm attaching all those springs again. Again, if you were talking to your clients, you're explaining to them each step by step, and they're just gonna watch everyone else do that, or you can assist someone and then they're watching you. Headrest back to the middle position, because that's our default here at Function Pilates. I'm gonna go ahead and take our shoulder blocks, and again, I want it in a wider stance. So that doesn't go there. I'm gonna lock it in, place it in, pin goes in, so don't forget about the pin. And then we're going to put up those risers first. And we're about the middle, I want to say about the third hole down, which again is our default setting here. And then we're going to go ahead and take the loops, again, right there. So it's handy for the clients. Handles are on, ready to go, and we are set. The straps here are going to be in a nice, not a very taut position, but enough for them to feel like they have resistance, okay? And then as far as adjusting these, like so, because you want to make sure that these are equal, which this one is not right now, we're going to go ahead and adjust with the little grooves here, okay? So all these little grooves through here is what is going to be adjusted. So say you had these out. If I undo the ropes here, and I was to basically pull this rope, so say you just got a brand new reformer and you're trying to put this together, and the rope comes like so. So it's like this, and you're like, well, I don't know how to put this together. So the thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the strap, the edge of this, we're going to loop it through the wheel, come all the way in. You're going to go ahead and come through the metal groove, or what's similar to your version if you're working on a white Allegro. I think that's their whole thing, is that you don't have to worry about the straps being shorter or longer. But if you're not, which most of us aren't, we're going to go ahead and place that through the groove in between the little black shifters here, and then you're going to find the hole to thread this underneath, like so. And let me get a better position here, because it's really easy to do. You're going to pull that through, and then you're going to go ahead and already take your straps here. So now this one's shorter, this one's longer. So I want to basically take this, open up the groove so I can move the rope through, okay? And now that looks pretty even. That looks great. And you're gonna place it like that. Here, because of we don't have carpet on the floor, the ropes are a little too long, so we tie them up so that they don't drag across the floor. Otherwise, the clients are listening to it. It's not a really pleasant sound. But that would be it there. When you're adjusting the straps, you wanna make sure that your client is in a safe position. So if they were having their feet in the straps, you'd want to take their feet out of the straps, then go ahead and adjust them. So that is going to be really, really important as you are going forward, just for safety purposes. But that is pretty much everything, guys. So if you need to rewatch this to make more sense, go ahead, slow it down. I know I went through that pretty fast, but that should pretty much clarify any questions that you guys have.